Hey everybody, what is up? It's Blynn and I'm back with another video, finally, at last, because my favourite TV show of all time has come back. Dragula. It is my favourite TV show ever. I absolutely love Dragula. I'm a huge fan. So I really wanted to come and do recaps of the show because I don't see that many on YouTube. So I thought for this Titans season I'd come on here and do this. We're 3 episodes into the season currently, so I've got a bit of catching up to do, but we'll get there, so bear with me, and yeah, let's get into the tea. So what we're going to do, I'm going to make this video for episode 1 and 2, and then I'll make a separate video for episode 3, which I just watched this morning, so let's get into it. So episode 1, before episode 1 of Dragula Titans, season 2 came out, I was waiting for the trailer and it went up. Oh my god, I was like, wow, budget. They seem to have spent a lot on the trailer this year, where they had like all of the monsters kind of going around houses trick-or-treating. It was so camp, it was so cool. I really loved it for a trailer. I thought, wow, yeah, they've really like up the budget for this. It was so cool to watch. Then we get on to episode 1. Okay, what I will say is the first episode, the only thing that I was slightly kind of disappointed about was, as you had all of the monsters coming in, returning to the competition, they weren't like coming out of tombstones or graves or anything like that. They were just kind of simply walking on stage, which I know the Boulets have probably paid a lot for that big stage setup that they've got, and it's fab, it's lovely, but I would have liked to see a bit more detail in the monsters returning. I would have liked to seen them, you know, crawling out of coffins or something, because let's not forget, these monsters are supposed to be dead, you know, they're supposed to be killed by the Boulets, you know, in their own individual Dragula seasons. So it would have been really cool to see them resurrected in a cool way, but that didn't happen. I guess that was because we got the trailer where they were all going trick-or-treating, so that bit was just kind of assumed, I guess, but it would have been cool to see them all come to life and, you know, risen again and all of that stuff, but yeah, we didn't get that. So everybody is coming in through the stage, walking down the stage like they would on the other drag show, and that I was a little bit kind of underwhelmed by. But then we got into the episode, and let me tell you, it was not underwhelming. As everyone all filed into the cauldron, one of the first things that happened, one of the first bits of kind of drama that popped off, was Zavaleta, La Zavaleta. She was kind of shading Jaharia for her neon green outfit, saying, oh, I don't like this neon green outfit, you know, kind of being a bit shady. So that was the first kind of bit of beef, bit of shadiness that we got in the show. Then JK decides to clap back at La Zavaleta, saying, well, you don't work in Brooklyn, basically calling Zava a mess and all of this stuff. And Zava's like, well, I work in bigger venues than you do, and it was like, okay, going at each other for a bit, back and forth. Then Cynthia Doll started to read JK for not working since their original season of Dragula, apparently, saying that JK hadn't worked since season 5 and JK hadn't done anything with their business and all of this. So you've got La Zavaleta, who's coming for Jaharia. Then you've got JK coming for La Zavaleta. Then you've got Cynthia Doll coming for JK. So these lot are all like on each other from the get-go. As soon as they've walked into the cauldron, before we've even had a fright feat or a challenge, they're going. Then enter Vanda Von Odd. Vanda isn't competing this season. Vanda is the exorcister, which previously Cynthia Doll had done, and then Coco Kane had done before her. So Vanda appears with this little voodoo doll, tells all of the cast that it's going to be a kind of luck of the draw fright feat where they've got to pull a stick out of this voodoo doll, and whoever gets the red tipped stick gets to cast the curse. So the challenge for this week, the challenge was Halloween House Party. So like Titans 1, we've got Halloween House Party again, where you've got people performing in groups, and of course when you've got people performing in groups, it always causes drama. Then you've got the stick from the voodoo doll. Whoever got the red tipped stick, like I said, was able to cast a curse, meaning that they could put anybody up for elimination that week. So of course it was Dahlia Black who got the red tip stick, and nobody was very happy about that. They all perform their house party routines. You've got like some drama between Eva and Sigourney Beaver as well, Eva Destruction and Sigourney Beaver. Eva was saying that she would put Sigourney's name up to go in the bottom on this challenge, because the way it worked was, in the challenge, the groups got to choose somebody from their group to put up for elimination. So La Zavaleta and Sigourney and Eva Destruction all worked together. So Zava and Eva Destruction both chose to put Sigourney Beaver up for elimination. It was kind of controversial. Apparently there was some tea with Sigourney saying, oh yeah, well, the boulets won't get rid of me and all this kind of stuff. Some of the contestants were saying that she was coming off a little bit kind of aloof, a little bit kind of, you know, untouchable. I don't know if there's any truth in that. We will see. But apparently, yeah, that's what was going on. Sigourney was being a little bit kind of untouchable. Oh, they won't get rid of me because of the fans, that kind of thing. So you had Dahlia with her stick, the little red tip pointy stick, putting Abora up for elimination, because she thought, well, Abora did say in the cauldron that she's not going to show anything new. Been here before. This is Abora's second Titans season, as it is Eva Destruction's second Titans season. But to be honest, I'm not mad to see them back, because I really like both of them, really like their drag. So I'm really happy to see Eva and Abora both back. A lot of people on Reddit, some of them were saying, oh, you know, they shouldn't get another chance, it's not fair. Well, life's not fair. Eva Destruction won the challenge this first week, as she should, my opinion. I loved the look myself. I thought this Grim Reaper look was amazing. So really thought Eva deserved that this week. Then, like I say, the remainder of the cast had to vote for somebody in their group to put up for elimination. Aside from Dahlia, who's voted for Abora using her little red tip stick power. So we've already got Abora going up for elimination. After Eva's win, the monsters all go back to the cauldron, and there was drama, and some drama in the confessionals, because there always is, right? You know, some drama in the confessionals. You had Dahlia, once again Dahlia, being annoyed about her teammates Jade Jolie and Priscilla Chambers, who, yes, I'm really happy to see Priscilla Chambers back this season. Definitely deserves another go. If you remember, Priscilla was top 3 on her original season of Dragula, so I'm really happy to see Priscilla back. So what happened with this? You had Dahlia Black kind of instigating things with production, allegedly, and Dahlia was saying that her castmates Jade and Priscilla were both drunk during the challenge, saying that they'd been kind of binge drinking to production, trying to get them in trouble, it sounds like, you know. And then what happened as this played out, the following week we see a little bit of this play out, where we find out from Sigourney Beaver that Jade and Priscilla's room was searched for the alcohol bottles. So it's like we're seeing a little bit of Dahlia trying to get people in trouble on the show already, and this is just episode 1. And the extermination is bungee jumping off the bridge to nowhere in the dark. Now, up for extermination, you had Frankie, you had Cynthia Dole, you had Abora, who was put up by Dahlia, and you had Dahlia also, which I thought that was a good twist, because, you know, here was Dahlia with the power to put somebody up for elimination, and then also facing the extermination herself. I was like, that's a good twist. Like that, you know, that's kind of like, okay, well, you know, you can't have your cake and eat it. You know, you don't get to put someone up for extermination and just point and laugh at them. No, oh, you got to do it too. So they all went bungee jumping in the dark, and it was after going through like a 5-mile trek through a forest, through rivers, everything in the cold, in the dark. It looked quite intense, but I've done a bungee jump. Funny story about that. When I did a bungee jump, how old was I? God, I think I was about 17 when I bungee jumped. I did it for charity at the time. It was one of those where you kind of collect money, you know, and then go and do your bungee jump for charity. Well, me being the donut that I am, I forgot to tuck my t-shirt into my harness before I jumped. So as I've jumped out, my t-shirt has gone whoop above my head, and I've given everybody a show. And who was watching? Well, at the time it was my boss, his wife, my colleagues, my co-workers. Yeah, not embarrassing at all. So yeah, when I think about a bungee jump in the dark, for me that's not like completely terrifying. I get it, if you're like really super afraid of heights, it might be really scary to you, but for me, I don't know, I'm like, well, you know, we've seen them jumping out of planes on Dragula, we've seen them bungee jumping before. I think it's one of those things that you've just got to kind of expect. If you sign up for a show like Dragula, they're going to put you through it at some point. And the ending of episode 1 was kind of a cliffhanger, pun intended. So they've all jumped off this bridge. All we saw was them swinging, and we didn't know who had been exterminated. So we wouldn't find that out until the beginning of episode 2. Okay, now episode 2. Episode 2. This was my Roman Empire. Like, episode 2 of Titans season 2. For me, I'm going to start off by saying this is one of the best episodes of Dragula, in my opinion, that I've ever seen. Because this, for me, had absolutely fucking everything. And the kitchen sink. Casts were all taken out to a music festival called Neotropolis. Looks like a kind of old cybergoth rave festival. Honestly, the whole surroundings of the place, to me, awesome. Like, you had everything there. You had club, you had market stalls, you had everything that you would want at a festival if you're an alternative person. And honestly, it really reminded me of my youth. As I was watching this episode, I was feeling really, really nostalgic. Like the whole kind of neon, cyberpunk, cybergoth fashions, everything. I was like absolutely in awe of this episode. It was everything that I used to love about going out clubbing, because that was what I used to do when I was like in my youth. It would be going out to like the goth raves, the underground goth raves, and that's where I come from. So for me, it's just very nostalgic, the whole thing, and it reminds me of a really fun time in my life. So I'm really like happy, really excited, really pumped when I see this, that they're at this music festival, and the challenge for the week is going to be that they've got to perform on stage as groups again. So another group challenge like episode 1. We've got another group challenge, but this time they've got to be like bands performing at the festival, cybergoth bands, and this to me is the perfect challenge, perfect episode. Like, so much that I loved about this episode. Following on from episode 1, the week previously, in this episode we've got Cynthia Dole, who is taking it very personally that Blackberry and Jaharia put her up for elimination. Cynthia's not so mad at Jaharia, but she is mad at Blackberry, and that all comes out in the tent when they're getting ready, when they're all doing their makeup. There's a fight between Cynthia and Blackberry. Blackberry's kind of not really having it. She's being very like kind, very respectful to Cynthia, but Cynthia is doing Cynthia. There was also another moment in the tent while they're all getting ready where Dahlia is still kind of harping on Jade and Priscilla for the drinking in the previous challenge. Priscilla makes a joke and says, "Oh, I'm drunk," while they're getting ready. And then Jade joins in. JK says, "Oh, well, for this challenge, it'd be good if you were drunk. You know, it'd probably help," or something like that. So yeah, that's still going on, the drinking thing with Dahlia ragging on people for drinking. still going on in episode 2. Then you've got Abora, who is not really featuring Dahlia and their behaviour either. And again, you've got Dahlia claiming that Sigourney Beaver brought up her fan base, using her fan base allegedly, saying that she can't be gotten rid of in the competition because of her fan base. Now, we haven't actually seen this at this point from Sigourney. This hasn't come out of Sigourney's mouth. We're just hearing it, you know, by way of Dahlia Black at the moment. And while all this is going on, all the drama in the tent with Cynthia calling Blackberry fake, them fighting, all the stuff with Dahlia and Priscilla and Jade, while all of the fighting's going on, you've got poor Loris, who just wants to put her makeup on in peace. Then Disasterina, she thinks Cynthia's being a dick. So people are kind of getting annoyed with Cynthia at this point because she is shouting so much at Blackberry. She is really, really not letting it go that Blackberry put her up for elimination, even though JK was also, you know, in her group. You had Jaharia, who was also there and also decided to put Cynthia up for elimination, but those two are kind of getting by unscathed from the wrath of Cynthia. Cynthia is targeting Blackberry. The thing that I did think was funny here was Cynthia escaping at the end of the sort of getting ready in the tent while they're doing the makeup. She escaped back into the porta potty, into the portaloo, like on her season when she got put in a portaloo to get ready for the challenge. I remember that she was put in there. Was it the Garbage Pail Kids challenge where Cynthia had to get ready in the portaloo by herself and she wasn't allowed like any help or to come out? So at the end of this, you see her kind of making a callback to her season by running off into the portaloo, locking herself in there. Okay, Cynthia, it's kind of like, I don't know, Cynthia this season really seems to want to be the main character. Not that she wasn't on her season, but like we're seeing a lot of Cynthia being very vocal, you know, being very on. So Cynthia really kind of wants to be a main character this season. Now, the thing that I loved so much about this fucking episode was the challenge itself. Ministry's New World Order. I saw Ministry live years ago and it was fucking incredible. So Ministry's New World Order is the track that they've got to perform in their groups, in their bands, and honestly, as soon as I heard it, the first few beats, I'm like, yes, bitch! I was ready to start dancing. I was ready to put like my old goth gear on and start giving it all that. You know, I was in there. Like for me, this would have been a holiday. You know, this really would have been a Jet2 holiday for me. A day out raving in the desert and then you go on stage to perform as part of a band. This to me is just fun. This to me, I don't know if I even call this a challenge, because to me this is just like the most fun performance that you could do in front of a live crowd. Like, it's sickening. It is so cool to get this opportunity to do this. You know, I would be really happy to watch something like this go down live. I would love to do something like this. You know, it is fun. It is nostalgic for me. It's everything that I love. You know, the music, the whole vibe of the festival, where they were. It's like it was made for me, and I would... JK, I thought, did a really awesome job in this challenge as a frontman of a band. JK did remind me a little bit of the frontman of Ministry. You know, he had the energy, he had the hair. I was believing it. You know, I was there with JK. I was like, yes, this looks like a frontman of a band. You know, to me, it read as that. Then you had Eva on drums, giving a really convincing performance as well. You had Jaharia, who won the challenge because the Boulets really loved her guitar playing. They thought that she was really cool, really high energy. I like Jaharia in this challenge. I wouldn't say that for me Jaharia was the winner. I would have picked either JK or Abora, because Abora was out there on stilts going into the crowd, and that to me reminded me of like old school Marilyn Manson before the SA allegations. You know, I know he's cancelled now, I know, but you know, it reminded me of old school Marilyn Manson on stilts performing on stage. It really reminded me of that. Nostalgic as fuck, you know, so nostalgic. something that I love. So for me, it's hard to, you know, not look at that when I see someone on stilts performing like that. You know, they're tall, they take up a lot of space, you know. It's hard for my eye not to go to them, you know. So really appreciated what Abora did, really appreciated what JK did, Eva as well, Sigourney as well, amazing, she was incredible. So yeah, I would say like those were kind of who I thought the top people were, and then it was Jaharia who ended up winning that challenge. So the bottom people in the challenge this week were Loris, Jade and Priscilla, and then we go back to the cauldron. And boy, it's a lot, this one. So back at the cauldron, given that Dahlia Black has already gone off in episode 1 in her confessional about Priscilla Chambers and Jade Jolie allegedly drinking during the challenge, now Zavaleta has brought up the fact that Dahlia has snitched to production about her using ketamine. Zavaleta turned to Dahlia and said, well, why did you snitch on me? You know, I use this on prescription. Then there was a whole thing about this, you know, with JK saying, oh, well, prescriptions don't come in baggies in the confessional. So at this point, it wasn't really clear whether La Zavaleta was taking this on prescription or whether it was more like personal use. Now, I did do my research on this, you know. Yeah, Sigourney said, oh, this will come up on the Reddit. Of course. Anything like this will, because it's a kind of serious allegation to make of somebody. So I think if you snitch on somebody and put this out there on TV, you've got to expect that it's going to be discussed. So with the prescription, this medication that La Zavaleta said was on prescription, well, it's something that you can take as a nasal spray. It's something that you can have administered via IV, intravenously. It's something that you can use under the watch of actual medical professionals. It's not something that you can just take willy-nilly, like on your own, unless you are like self-medicating, because maybe you don't have insurance. And I'm not saying that La Zavaleta doesn't have insurance, because, you know, in America, the healthcare system is very different to us in the UK. In the UK, ketamine is only prescribed with people being watched, having it administered to them, or it is in Scotland available as a nasal spray. But people aren't really left alone to their own devices to just take it as they wish. So La Zavaleta was claiming that she's taking it for a mental health issue. And like I say, I don't know if it's the case that maybe, you know, she was taking street drugs or what, I don't know. But of course, in the drag scene, we hear and see a lot about people unfortunately leaving us too soon due to drugs, you know, because I think it's the nature of the beast. You know, you're in clubs all the time. There's a lot of drink, there's a lot of drugs, you know, a lot of that is happening, you know. We can't sit here and pretend that drag queens don't take drugs, because some do, you know. Especially in the queer community, I feel like it's something that not everybody wants to talk about, but it's something that happens a lot. You know, I've been out and been offered stuff in queer venues, you know, and when I was younger and I used to go to all the goth raves and stuff, it was rife there, you know. Everybody was on this kind of drugs, everybody. So people used to use it recreationally, like every weekend. And then for some people it would become a problem, like, you know, okay, you're using it first as a party drug, and then you're using it like on a random Tuesday morning after you've been to the after parties and all of this, you know, on like a Sunday. Oh, then suddenly it's Monday morning, you know, then you're using on a Tuesday morning, you know, or whatever. I'm not a stranger to that environment, and I do know what it's like to use those kind of things to self-medicate when you don't have access to any kind of help for your mental health. through legal avenues or through the NHS or whatever. You know, I know what it's like to be in that position where you're just desperate to feel better than what you currently feel, and you're desperate to just, you know, feel like a normal human, and you don't want this black cloud hanging over you or whatever, and you take stuff to get by. You know, it's something that happens, especially in nightlife, you know. And I think, not to mention it, I think if the boulets had left it out, I think they would be kind of remiss to leave it out, because just because it's not something that's pretty or easily digestible, you know, to talk about, I think they would be silly to leave it out. Because if you think back to this time last year, roughly, we lost the Vivian from Drag Race UK season 1, and you know, unfortunately, as I say, it is something that happens in nightlife. You know, my brother as well was a DJ, and he was in that kind of scene, you know, not the queer scene, but the nightlife scene, and he, you know, unfortunately lost his life through drugs and alcoholism, you know. And I don't sit here in a place of judgment expecting people not to indulge, because they're going to. It's nightlife, you know. So for me, when I saw Dahlia bringing up all of this about Jade, Priscilla, and also La Zavaleta and the prescription, or not prescription, whichever it may be, I just think, like, she didn't need to do all that, you know. I just think, you know, we know that queer people, we're complicated, you know, we're all different, we're not the same as each other. And I just think it was low of Dahlia to bring all of that stuff up to production, to go and kind of snitch when she didn't really need to. You know, she could have just kept about it and nobody would have known. But, you know, it did get brought up. It did get discussed. And, you know, I'm grateful that it did, because, as I said, you know, nightlife, this is something we see a lot of people go. We see a lot more people getting sober now these days in the performance kind of world, you know, drag artists especially. We're seeing people declaring that they're getting sober because the substances or the alcohol has become a problem for them. It's become an issue. So something that once was maybe fun, or something that they maybe once used just to go on stage, became a problem, you know. And it's very easily done, you know. I think I don't look down on anyone who has a problem with it, because I've been there myself, and, you know, people in my family have been there. So it's not something that I think we should look at with shame. I think it's something that we as a community should talk to each other about more, you know, check on each other more, and, you know, offer to do things with people that don't maybe revolve around drink or drugs, you know, go for a coffee once in a while or something, you know. Random idea, but, you know, let's learn to love each other outside of the clubs too. So let's get back on track. After that, let's get back on track. We have got Jade and Loris, who got put up for extermination this episode. Jade and Loris both go up the stairs, and who goes down? Loris. So that was where we were left with episode 2. Take care, stay safe, stay well. I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you with an episode 3 recap very soon. Take care.